Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today, this video is really for advisors and upcoming or future DECA judges to help you become the best judge for your upcoming district or state competition so that you can help all of your competitors get to the next level in DECA. I'm going to break this video into three basic parts. The first part will be what DECA is, just a quick synopsis so you understand how to navigate through DECA. The second will be what a DECA roleplay event looks like. And the third part will be how to be the best evaluative DECA judge that you can be for your upcoming DECA judging experience. So part one, what is DECA? And in really brief synopsis, DECA is a business competition that allows high school students to compete in one of nearly 50 different types of events. Those events can be grouped very simply into an event that requires a written component and then a presentation, or as we'll talk about specifically today, an event that requires a test and a role play. So those role play events are events where students show up to the competition for the very first time and are presented with a role play or a case study scenario that they have not seen at all before. At the competition, they'll have a certain amount of time to prepare for an event that they've never seen, and then after that preparation time, they bring their notes to you, the judge, and you get to score the presentation based on how they took that scenario and presented it to you. So we call them role plays because the student is expected to perform a role for you, the judge, who also receives that information in a particular role. Part two of this video is to walk you through what a role play would look like and give you something specific that you can study and look at as an example of how to do this event well. Now, I had a student who came in first in the world in her event, Personal Financial Literacy, and I've linked her video below and also her role play sample down below in the description to let you see what a full role play would look like. Now, full disclosure, I gave her lots of time to prep, and her role play takes the full 10 minutes, which would be the most you would see for an individual. Most of the role plays that we see from individuals at the district or state level competition will probably fill like 60 to 80% of the time given. So if you're looking at a 5-minute, maybe maximum role play, you're looking 3 to 4 minutes, or if a 10-minute max role play, you're looking at like that 6 to 8 minute range. My student fills the full 10 minutes, but it gives you an idea if you look at the sample role play and what's expected of the student, and then her video, it'll show you what the role play could look like. Hopefully take a moment to watch the student's role play, but I want to walk you through what the instructions look like because regardless of what the specific scenario is or who the students are, the setup of the role play is going to be very similar for you as a judge. The first page of the role play just tells you basic instructions, and these are very similar for all sorts of individuals until you get to the very bottom where you see 3 to 5 or maybe up to 7 different performance indicators. These are the specific content areas that the students should be performing or telling you about in their role play. So those will come up again, but from the front page of this, that's all that you really need to know. When you get to the second page and it shows you the event scenario, these are all the details the student has to perform his or her role play. It tells you what the role of the student is, it tells you what the role of you as the judge is, and it tells you then all the details of the role play. When you sit down to judge, you will have time before the first students show up to you to read through this role play and think about what the average student should be able to present to you. When the students are done, when the competitors are done presenting, you have the opportunity to ask the students questions. The questions are always going to be in the role play scenario specifically. So there's a question number 1 and a question number 2 that are listed here. I encourage you to ask one or both of those questions, but if you ask one or both, make sure you ask one or both of those questions to all of the competitors equally. So what I recommend is pick one of the two and ask one of those 2 questions to every single competitor. Now, you're allowed to ask other questions, a clarifying point, or something that might help a student redirect and get back on track, but you definitely want to ask at least one question the same to all of the competitors in front of you that ask them to think about something a little bit more proactively or a little bit more on their feet. Part 3 of this video is really just how to score effectively so that you give the best, most reliable scores to all the competitors in your event, and that you're giving positive feedback or feed forward to the students so they can do better in these real life type scenarios. It does get to be a little tricky on how to score, so I strongly recommend that you score in pencil so that as the competition goes on, you can kind of adjust scores after you see a couple of things. So my first tip about evaluation is score in pencil, and after about 3 to 5 of the competitors that come in front of you, you'll start to get a good sense of both what the performance indicators should look like and how the students should be addressing those 21st century skills. If you take notes on the score sheets as you go, which I strongly encourage you to do, notes about things that you like from the students' performances, or notes about things that could be made better for the performances. It will allow you to go back over the first couple of presentations and adjust scores if you need to, so that you are scoring reliably from the first competitor you see into the very last competitor that you see. When you score a participant's role play, you're going to be looking at two gigantic criteria. The first will be how they perform on those performance indicators that you saw on the cover sheet. And there's going to be, again, 3 to 5 or maybe 7 performance indicators. And then how they perform on 21st century skills. And those skills are the same for every event. And you'll be asked to score them for exceeds expectations, meets expectations, below expectations, or little or no value. You want to reserve your very best roleplay performances for exceeds expectations. And not every competitor is going to score and exceeds expectations for all of the roleplay categories. But you want to reserve that category for the very best performances that you see with that specific criteria. And you'll have a range within exceeds expectations. So you have some that might score at the very top of that range and others not so much. So you have a range to play with there. Meets expectations is honestly where I'd score most kids, unless they really, really, really aren't talking about performance indicators or have just completely flubbed their role plays. I wouldn't use below expectations at all, or doesn't meet expectations at all, unless the student just comes before you and says, oh geez, I just don't know. Or if he kid just completely blanks on what he or she is trying to do. So try to reserve below expectations or doesn't meet expectations for those that are just very obviously not in that category. Using the upper two categories of exceeds or meets expectations should give you enough wiggle room to differentiate the very best competitors from the middle of the pack and from the low end. So a lot of the students will get their scores and will feel one way or another about the numeric score, but the next thing the students will look for is, what did the judge say about how I did? So the students are looking for two things. What content-wise did the judge see or hear that the judge liked? So sometimes when you just make the notes as you go, that's really good feedback for the students about what the judge heard that the judge liked. So making notes is really important. You also have, however small amount of time between the role play that finishes and the next incoming role play, to jot some notes about what you really like about what that student did. Try to give some feed forward, something that the kid can take away and say, oh, okay, I can do that better. Even your best presentations, give them feed forward that's positive leaning, so that kids can say, okay, the next time I do this role play, I want to do this thing better. It can be something simple as eye contact or the way they communicate, or it can be something specific about the content or the approach that they take. But if you have the opportunity, not just note what the content of the role play is, but give the students something to look forward to in upcoming and future role plays in their DECA competitions. Thank you for your willingness to be a DECA judge. If it weren't for you, students couldn't take their classroom knowledge and expand it into the real-world scenarios and the problems that we see in our DECA competitions. I know that it might be a little scary, and I hope this video has helped explain a little bit about what it takes to be a DECA judge. But trust me, once you see the enthusiasm and excitement that students bring in the role plays, you will be an outstanding judge to differentiate between those exceptional role plays and those awesome role plays and those meeting expectation role plays. You will knock this out of the park.